What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's wildcard time ahead of Game Week 16. So this is the final week to use your wildcard if you've not already used it. There's no reason not to. Like, if you've got one or two moves to make, just activate the wildcard, get them done. Don't spend points hits. Obviously, don't make changes for the sake of it, right? If there's players you want to keep that you would have kept if you didn't have a wildcard, there's no need to get rid of them. But yeah, this is the time to use it. So before I get into the video, there's two caveats really. One, I don't have my wildcard, so sometimes it's not so easy to think about it when you don't have to stick with it. And also sometimes the grass is greener. You're like, well, I can't get that player normally, but I can get them on a wildcard, so I'll go for it. But I've tried to think of it logically how I would do it if I was wildcarding, which I'm not. It's worth pointing that out. And secondly, I'm recording this on the 23rd of December, ahead of the Game Week 15 deadline. Now, the reason for that is the time to start thinking about using your wildcard is from kind of the 26th of December onwards. But obviously, you've only got the 26th and the 27th before the deadline on the 28th. There's not much time to get this video out. And also, Boxing Day, which is the 26th, Stephen's Day in Ireland, it's almost like a second Christmas to me, so I don't want to be doing FPL stuff, to put it honestly, right? And on the 27th, which I will be doing some FPL stuff, I've already got plans on what to do, so I'm not going to have time to fit a wildcard video in. Obviously, if there's injuries and stuff like that, I'll try and talk about other players you could go for as I go. And to be completely honest, if there's so many injuries that this wildcard team is just a no-go come Game Week 16, then I'll just delete the video and you may never even see this. If you are watching it, then great, I decided to keep it up. But let me know in the comments, right? You're watching it and thinking, yeah, you should have just recorded this before Game Week 16, then maybe I'll just take it down. But there you go. Hopefully it's still useful. And the way I'm going to do it is like my chip strategy video. I'm just going to do it in one take, hopefully, and just talk as I go, right? And tinker as well, because I think on most wildcard videos, I put up a screenshot of the team, I talk about those players, maybe touch on who I would get instead, and then go from there. But in this one, I want to do a little bit of tinkering, which should probably help too. So let's get into it. If you do enjoy it, please do give it a like, hit subscribe as well. First things first is strategy. So most people wildcard and they're going to do the same strategy that everybody else is doing, right? Which is wildcard in Game Week 16, bench boost in Game Week 18. So basically build your wildcard team for 17 and 19 where the doubles are, and then that's it, right? And bench boost in Game Week 19 most likely. I think it's a pretty good strategy. I don't see many cons with doing it. Obviously use the free hit in 18 so you don't have to worry about the players that are playing in that week, because obviously, if they're playing in 18, they don't have a double in 19. And I also think playing the bench boost, if you can, after a wildcard is virtually always the best time to do it. And yes, there might be as big, or if not a bigger, double game week in Game Week 26, potentially. We don't know that for sure. If you wildcard then and bench boost, you're left with that bench for the rest of the season. Whereas if you do it now, you have the knowledge of what's happening, right? Unless there's postponements and stuff through COVID or weather, we know what's happening in 18 and 19. You get the bench boost out of the way. Then when you use your second wildcard, you get some of that value out. There is potentially a way to wildcard in 16, be prepared for 18 without a free hit, and then still get a few double game week players in for 19. And then you've got your free hit and your second wildcard still to use, which could be super useful. The reason to do that is because the Game Week 26 doubles, if they happen, are mostly going to be based on who blanks from Game Week 29. And that is based on who gets through to the FA Cup quarterfinals, right? Or the results from the quarterfinals. And the reason for that is we expect that most of the top teams would get through, and therefore they would blank in Game Week 29. So the likes of Liverpool, City, Man United, etc., the players we'd have in our team, and then we'd be stuck. And so having the free hit would let us use, basically get in players that aren't playing, and we can just try and get through 18 and 19 now. The only thing I would say against that are two things really. One, there's not guarantee that every single top team gets through. We always see like sometimes one or two of these teams being fine. We keep the players, happy days. And two, it is guesswork that they would go into Game Week 26 double. Ben, who I've spoken about a lot, Ben Crellin on this channel, is saying that, and I would usually believe what he says. Like, I've got no reason to doubt him because he is the king of this stuff. But just because, again, like I said on another video, just because he thinks it's the best time doesn't necessarily mean that's what will actually happen. So we'll have to wait and see. I feel like wildcarding now and bench boosting when you know what's happening is the best time to do it. You could argue both ways. You could say that not knowing what's going to happen, it's best to have chips intact. But also you could just say, well, I know what's happening now. I'll use my chips to attack it. So you can choose, right? You can build your wildcard how you want. For this one, I'm primarily focusing on people that want to bench boost in 19 and free hit in 18. Obviously, exit strategies, it's always worth thinking about how you'll either get rid of a player or how you'll get one in. So Kevin De Bruyne springs to mind. 3 good fixtures from Game Week 20, starting with West Brom away. Now, a lot of people will not have him on their wild card, but you'll need to know how you're going to get him back in, basically. At least I would want him back in from Game Week 20. And obviously, no free hit in 18 is just what I've talked about, right? If you don't want a free hit, maybe you change your strategy just a bit. So I've kind of already put together a team, which hopefully you can see without too many issues. So this would be a team where I'm bench boosting in 19 and free hitting in 18, because apart from Aurier for Spurs, there is no team in here that plays in Game Week 18 unless I've done something wrong. They should all be double Game Week 19 players. Now, there's a few players in here I still haven't got that you could think about going for, right? So you could go for double double Liverpool defence, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson. And by the way, caveat here, the prices of the players that I've bought might be different to you. So Robertson, for example, is 7.2 because I got him on him early. I already know he's gone up to 7.3, and who knows, he might even be 7.4 by the time you wildcard. So all this stuff to take into account. But for my team, I got a 0.5 million buffer. For your team, it might be less. It might even be more, right? So double Liverpool defence is something to go for. Is Mane and Salah the best way of using those funds, right? Because by the time you wildcard in 16, you've already missed the West Brom game. Then they got Newcastle away, good fixture, and Southampton away, not a bad fixture. And the double game week includes Man United and Burnley. So it's not the greatest double, but Liverpool are the best attacking team. So you could go for Salah Mane. One thing that will jump out like a sore thumb to a lot of people is the triple Leeds attack. One of the reasons to have them is just value, right? A lot of people are going to look at that and think that's a no-go. But Bamford's in everyone's teams anyway. Surely Rafinha for 0.4 million more, again, maybe more by the time you wildcard, is better than Souček, right? I know everyone loves Souček. 5 million, he's arguably been the best bench option so far this season, but I definitely prefer Rafinha for 0.4 more. They got nearly as good a double game week, and they got Newcastle away the game week after in game week 20. And then if you look at the fixtures, you could pretty much hold them until you wildcard in maybe game week 24 or 25, whenever it might be, which would be... So they basically have Newcastle away, Leicester away, Everton at home, Palace at home, Arsenal away. So if you're wildcarding in 24, you'd only have to play them against Palace, Everton, Leicester and Newcastle. Not the greatest fixtures, but you have to consider their value and what they're letting you do elsewhere as well. Che Adams is in there mostly because there's no other cheap strikers I'd want unless it was Antonio or Chris Wood. So there are other options that you could go for as well. And if you can stretch it, I would definitely have Bowen instead of Souček. Now, defence is interesting, right? Because it's really difficult to talk about this too much now because at the time of recording, I don't know when Chilwell and Reece James are going to be back. If Reece James is fit by game week 16, I'd definitely rather have him over Zuma. You save a bit of money. I know Zuma scored a lot of goals and he is a threat from corners and set pieces and free kicks, etc. But I still prefer Reece James in that spot. You save yourself some money for the long term, and I think you're just good to go. In this particular setup, it's very hard for me to get a different defender that's not Aurier. You could go for a Man City defender instead, but for 16 and 17, they play Everton and Chelsea, whereas Spurs play Fulham and Leeds, and I feel like that's a little bit better. And Aurier, to be fair, has started like the last 6 or 7 game weeks. And Spurs have got a pretty good game in game week 19. If James was fit, you could do Aurier to Reece James in game week 19. That would give you a double Chelsea defence as well with Zuma. So that's not a bad option either. You keep Aurier for 16-17, then he is your transfer in game week 19 because you wouldn't have many other transfers to make. Now, one thing a lot of people are going to look at this is say, where the hell are all my Spurs attackers? Absolutely fair comment. So Mane is probably the one I would drop rather than Fernandes, and I would just put Son in instead. The problem comes in... Actually, there isn't a problem with that, actually, because you can just keep Son for Fulham and Leeds, 16-17, and then you swap him in 19. Sorry, yeah, this is where the problem comes, because if you're using Son to Mane in 19, then Aurier to James is a hit. So maybe you do Aurier to James in game week 17 instead. I mean, Spurs are playing Leeds that game anyway, so it's going to be difficult to keep a clean sheet. You're going to play Robertson every single game week. You could play Zuma, you could play Soufal, whoever it might be. In terms of goalkeepers, look, the best goalkeeper for me is Fabianski, but he's more expensive than Soufal. He's more expensive than Balbuena. And if you want to carry this team, because you still want 2 playing goalkeepers, but if you put in Fabianski, even if you swapped him for McCarthy, you have to spend an extra 0.5 million minimum on it. That's quite a big sum of money to be spending extra on a goalkeeper you're going to have to hold for another 3, 4, 5 game weeks after the double. So I think Johnson and McCarthy is about as good as it gets. Obviously, you can't fit in a Leeds defender here because you've got 3 attackers. I would find it difficult to know how else to manage that front line, right? Because let's say you didn't want Rodrigo, not a problem, right? You've got enough money to spend. Antonio maybe, but I don't think he's going to be available. Haller potentially. I mean, if Antonio's fit, you do put him in, I think, if you're wildcarding, but we're probably not going to know by game week 16. So you could take a punt on Haller, but I just don't think he's that great, really. And the other option is Chris Wood, but I don't really fancy him too much for the double. So there isn't too many options for cheap strikers. And the only thing this allows you to do really is put in Dallas in one of these spots. So you could have Dallas instead of Balbuena, instead of Aurier, for example, to have extra double game week players. Or you could have Meslier in goal. But I'm just not really fancying it. I think at Rodrigo's price, 5.7, I'm just having a quick look on another screen here. There's not too many other strikers that would beat him, I don't think, for the same price. Like, you've got Martial, Ings, etc., Werner, but they're all a lot more expensive. So I don't think it's a huge issue to have triple leads. I mean, you are putting all your eggs in one basket, but they've got a good double game week, and I think they're good value. And obviously, going forward from game week 20, because this is a bench boost team, don't forget, you don't have to play all these players every week. Like against Spurs, you could bench one of Rodrigo, Bamford, or Rafinha and play the rest. And I don't know, even bench, for example, Adams against Liverpool in game week 17. And then game week 20 onwards, whoever it might be out of these, you just bench one. And I know people, some like me, don't like having a good bench, but for a few game weeks, it's not the end of the world. And I don't feel like you're really missing out on too much with this one. So like I said, in game week 19, you switch Son to Mane, and then job done, right? That's your double game week team. Now, again, there's other ways to spread the money, right? If we say that, let's just say Son is the player we want, so we don't want to spend more than that. You've got 2.7 million more to spend. So that's Zuma to Trent Alexander-Arnold with spare change as well, right? So that gives you another option. So let's just put Trent in now while we're tinkering away. That gives you 1.3 million more to spend. That could be Aurier to Zuma to James to Chilwell, right? You just get them in straight away and happy days, right? Because you want Son for game week 16 and 17, I would say. Most people are going to want a Spurs player. Let's say Chilwell's back. He's probably not going to be, but let's say he is because he's the most expensive one. You can still build this team, right? And this is a really nice team. I quite like it. I know, again, triple leads is going to be the problem for most people, but overall it's decent. You're not relying on Souček. You've got Bowen. You've got 2 West Ham defenders with great fixtures, and you can afford the double Liverpool attack, and you've still got Son in for 16, 17. The issue comes with how to get De Bruyne back for me. Now, the good thing about having Son, right, and again, maybe you don't go for Chilwell, maybe you go for Zuma just for fitness concerns. Let's say that team is all fit and available. You got no transfers to make in game week 17, so if something crops up, you could go for that. You could take a punt on someone else and then bring one of these players in instead, whoever that might be. And then in game week 19, when Son does have a good fixture, but it's not a double, you could swap him out. And yes, you can't get to Mane, but you could go for someone like Rashford instead, right, at Man United. So that will give you another double game week player. And in game week 19, they play Liverpool away. Not great, of course, and then Fulham away as well. And pretty good fixtures afterwards. Sheffield United at home to start off. So you wouldn't necessarily need to get rid of him straight away. So that's another option. And I think someone like Rashford or Mane or someone like that is a player that most non-wildcarders cannot get to because it just takes too many transfers, and obviously people like me without a wildcard, we're worried about the other double game week players, etc. We don't have time to be trying to get in Rashford or Mane as well. So that's what I would do. I do think Kevin De Bruyne, like if I bring up his fixtures, and I know people, I obviously at the time of recording this, I don't know what he's done against Newcastle or Everton or Chelsea. But after the double, it's West Brom away, Sheffield United at home, Burnley away. They just tanked Burnley 5-0. Sheffield United have conceded 3 to Man United. And West Brom, look, I don't get what anyone says. West Brom have been lucky not to concede more against Spurs, Man United and Man City. So that could be a really good game too. And you could arguably captain him here if you didn't want to go for Fernandes against Sheffield United. But either way, both are good options. So for me, I'd probably, because you don't want to get rid of Salah or Fernandes, and all these players are so cheap, it's virtually impossible to get up to Kevin De Bruyne. So I would make sure this slot is a one transfer move, and I think Mane is the easiest way. Yes, you'd have to drop Trent or Robertson, and by the way, if you can't afford Robertson, you can always just go for Trent if he's a little bit cheaper, and you just go for something like this instead. And obviously, if Reece James is fit, I do think double Chelsea defence still looks really good. Like for me, that is a great wildcard team for Game Week 19, and I think, again, just to touch on the Leeds thing one more time, a lot of people are going to look at it and think that's a bad thing rather than focusing on all the good things you've got. You've got Fernandes, Salah, Mane for double game weeks or 2 games. You've got a really, really solid defence if James is fit. And Balbuena and Soufa are about as budget and value as you can get when you've got West Brom and Burnley at home to play. And then the 2 goalkeepers, you just rotate as you go along. And the rotation actually after Game Week 19 is not too bad for those 2. You have to play Arsenal a couple of times, but Arsenal are so bad, it's not really the worst thing. So I'm quite happy with that, and I'm going to leave it there. I think if you wanted to not use your free hit in 18, you'd have to start loading up on De Bruyne, Kane and Son, which is not a bad thing because they've got good fixtures in 19. The problem comes is how the hell do you fit them in and also have Salah and Fernandes? And that, for me, is why free hit in 18 is so useful, basically, right? Because you don't want to take out Fernandes to put De Bruyne in, Mane to put Son in, and just be stuck with Salah, and he would be the one to fund Kane anyway. So something like that is ideal. I don't think I've really missed out on too many players. You've got Ings at Southampton, but I think Adams for a lot less money can do well. Chelsea players are probably the ones that I've not touched on much. Like, instead of Mane, you could have Pulisic, for example. But again, I'd want to know how to get back to Kevin De Bruyne. And the big one is probably Jamie Vardy. So I think that's an easy switch, right? You switch Mane and Rodrigo or Adams, depending on which one you want to swap over. And you put Jamie Vardy in. And then you've got to spend 7.8 on a midfielder, whoever that might be. The only thing I've not talked about really is the fact that you have to, for this team, you'd have to lose Calvert-Lewin and Grealish, which are 2 players you might want back after Game Week 20. So you could hold on to them if budget allows. So perhaps you have one of Grealish or one of Calvert-Lewin. I think out of the 2, it's very tricky. It probably depends how much money you've got wrapped up. But Calvert-Lewin is probably the one I'd want to keep more as it stands. But that is something to consider as well. So hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, doing this before the Game Week 15 deadline is not necessarily ideal. But I did want to try and get a video out there because I know a lot of people will be thinking about it. And by the time you see this video, Leeds will have played, I think, they would have played Burnley, and then they're going into a West Brom away game. So if they can get a few goals against Burnley, West Brom away is probably even easier, and the way they attack is decent. So I will leave the video there. I will bring back up my intro screen. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a like. I hope Christmas was good for you yesterday, and I'll be back tomorrow with some more videos. So hit that subscribe button if you haven't, and the notification bell. Let me know in the comments below what wildcard questions you have if you are using it this week, and I'll catch you tomorrow for another video.